Well, hello everyone, and good afternoon. I am not Kirk Schultz. Yeah, I think you noticed that part. Thank you very much for that introduction. Unfortunately, President Schultz was unable to join us at the last minute, but I was very happy to come and talk to all of you to give you an update on what's going on at WSU. So welcome to the second CougsFirst event of the year. I heard great things about what happened in Spokane, and I've heard a lot about these shows in the past, and so I look forward to spending some time and meeting great Cougar alumni and friends this afternoon. So can I have a go Cougs? Thank you, that was great. Now, I'm just going to share a few highlights and then open it up for some questions and let us get down to the business that we're all here for. Certainly, a lot has happened since the last CougsFirst event in Seattle 2 years ago. First of all, I was not here 2 years ago. I was hired in July of 2020 as the Provost and Executive Vice President at the start of the COVID lockdown. So I interviewed for my job completely on Zoom. I was offered a job on Zoom. I accepted a job on Zoom. And I moved from New York State across the country with my husband, son, and 2 dogs and all our belongings to a place I had never seen before, to the town of Pullman, Washington. So it's been a great 2 years for me. And I had spent all of my career up to that point in the Northeast United States. I had never been east of the Cascades in Washington, and I've fallen in love with the state, as has my entire family. But then this past January, I was named the inaugural Chancellor of the WSU Pullman campus. Many of you who graduated from Pullman maybe didn't notice that Pullman didn't have its own chancellor. We have a president of the system, and then each campus has a chancellor. Chancellor Paul Petrie is here of the Everett campus. But Pullman, Kirk sort of served as a president of the system and by default, the chancellor of the Pullman campus. But now I'm responsible for running the WSU flagship campus in addition to my duties as provost. I think he got 2 for 1 on the cheap out of me, actually. And this move has meant that President Schultz is able to more keenly focus on things like setting the strategic vision for all of the campuses, advocating for higher education policy, representing WSU at state and federal levels, and engaging in philanthropic activities, which I'll talk a little bit about today. So another exciting change is in university leadership is that Dr. Wendy Powers has been selected as the next dean of the College of Agricultural, Human, and Natural Resource Sciences, known to many as Connors. And it's a named deanship thanks to the generous gift of Gordon Davis. She's the 12th dean of the college and the first woman to serve in that role permanently. Dr. Powers comes to us from the UC system, where she served as the Associate Vice President for Agriculture and Natural Resources, and she was previously at Iowa State and Michigan State in leadership roles. She'll be starting full-time on August 15th, so you'll get to see her face when you come to WSU events in the months and years to come. So like every other institution in the world, I dare say, the COVID-19 pandemic presented significant challenges to WSU. Of course, it forced us to ask questions like, how do we teach? Especially that first year. I arrived just as we were making the decision that we needed to teach completely remotely or almost completely remotely that first year. How do we switch from in-person to virtual learning in less than a week? And we did so. Secondly, how do we work? Many of us had to work from home. I worked in sort of a hybrid fashion. I went into an office where I didn't have any office mates the first year of my job, pretty much. But some jobs really didn't allow remote work, and our Vice President for Human Resources, who's here, Teresa Elliott-Cheslick, was really at the helm in helping us navigate for our employees how we adjust to this new environment. How do we continue research in the lab and in the field and keep our student athletes safe and engaged? These were enormous challenges for WSU and for other institutions. And of course, mental health was and remains a concern for our students and our employees. And of course, I won't bore you with this part, but there were and are financial obstacles. Just as we were coming out of a 3-year fiscal recovery period, we were once again challenged with doing more with less. Obviously, tuition levels dropped with enrollment, and we had more expenses to try to accommodate. So even though we had a great deal of challenges, one of the things that I've noticed as one of the newest Cougs is that Cougs always rise to the occasion. And on the Pullman campus, for example, we provided ultra cold freezers to store COVID vaccine for the public county health department. We also partnered with the public health department to conduct contact tracing for the entire county. Our system-wide vaccination rates for students, faculty, and staff exceeded 90%. And our scientists conducted critical research into treatments for COVID-19. We also provided the public with clear and easy to understand information about the virus. And finally, we provided free laptops and internet access to hundreds of students who were not able to connect to online classes from home. Many of these innovations are things that are going to continue on well past the pandemic because it made us realize that accessibility to things that we might take for granted normally are really a challenge for some of our students. So a couple of other updates. First of all, our researchers have made great strides in public health beyond the COVID-19 research. For example, WSU was selected to lead a $125 million USAID project to detect emerging viruses around the globe. Research led by biologist Michael Skinner has uncovered potential biomarkers for several health conditions like autism, rheumatoid arthritis, and premature birth. And WSU faculty have continued to achieve a variety of remarkable feats. WSU was named a top producer of Fulbright scholars, and 5 faculty were named fellows of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And for you jazz fans, let me see, how many jazz fans do I have in the room? Okay, we have a few jazz fans. The WSU Jazz Big Band, led by Professor Greg Yasinitsky, was named the winner of the Large Jazz Ensemble Award from Downbeat Magazine on the basis of their virtual recordings made by the band while WSU was online. And you can see these on YouTube if you're interested. See on the right, there's a snapshot of it. But if you look for the WSU Jazz Band, you'll be able to see what our students were able to do remotely. Excitingly also, we had 2 WSU faculty members who were elected to the National Academy of Sciences. John Browse, who's a professor of biochemistry, and a special place in my heart, Tim Kohler, who's an archaeologist. I happen to be an archaeologist too, so I was really thrilled that Tim was honored in this way. And these are really highly prestigious awards. They recognize distinguished and continuing achievements in original research, and membership in the Academy is considered to be one of the greatest honors that a scientist can have in the United States. Really exciting for our students to be able to study with scholars like this. I also wanted to mention that last year we launched a faculty cluster hire focusing on scholarship of racism and social inequality in the Americas. And the program was initiated to address system-wide needs for scholarship, teaching, and outreach that was really aimed at dismantling racism and recruiting and retaining a more diverse faculty. Issues of inequality have been, of course, exacerbated by the pandemic and have been highlighted by recent tragic events. We welcomed our first cohort this fall, 2021, shown here with these faculty members and research areas. We have just coming to the completion of searches this year that focus on healthcare and health justice in marginalized communities. And then the third round will be launched this fall, and they will focus on Native American and Indigenous communities. And we intend to keep this cluster hire going indefinitely. These faculty will transform our curriculum, our research profile, and will really connect to our students in innovative ways. Now, Cougs have continued to be extremely generous these past 2 years. Our endowment distributed nearly $22 million in fiscal year 21 to students, faculty, research, and programs, and about 1/3 of that was for student scholarships system-wide. We had our highest level of philanthropic activity to date in fiscal year 22, at least the highest since 2015. And as of April, our fiscal year to date gift totals exceed $123 million. Some gifts to highlight. We had an anonymous $2.2 million gift for the Rural Health Initiative at the WSU College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. We received an estate gift from Joe Washburn of more than $1 million to support the Joe Washburn and Sue Durant Sport Management Scholarship in the College of Education. As many of you know, Joe was a longtime Pullman resident and retired WSU administrator. She was a key player at WSU in helping to meet the requirements of Title IX, and she also helped to start up the sport management program at WSU. And then, unless you have not been following any news about WSU, you know that last month we announced a landmark $20 million gift from Edmund and Beatrice Schweitzer and the Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories. And this gift will support the next generation of students in the Voiland College of Engineering and the construction of a new Student Success Center. It's the largest gift ever received for the Voiland College and one of the largest gifts in the history of Washington State University. The college has already received several other prestigious gifts for the building, and we've raised a total of $31 million towards our $40 million goal thus far for this effort. So there's room for more if anyone has, wants to. All right. We're also seeing positive trends in enrollment recovering from the pandemic. So first of all, and I know this will be a question that I'll be asked because everywhere I go, people say, how is the enrollment at WSU? Right now, we're down about 7% system-wide from where we were 2 years ago before the pandemic. And that's just about the national average if you look nationally. Our campuses have not all been affected the same, but system-wide, that is about where we are. And so we're doing things like reaching out to high school students, expanding on success programs and initiatives, making sure we retain the students who come to us, because once they've come, we want to make sure they succeed and get to graduation. We've had a number of events and upcoming programs where we've hosted thousands of students and families. The last one on the Pullman campus, we had 1,500 guests at the spring preview for sophomores and juniors on the Pullman campus, and that's a program we have not held since 2019. So just getting people to our campuses, to our 6 campuses, or 5 physical campuses anyway, and getting them to see what we have to offer, I think is really going to help a great deal. We have more than twice the number of international students who have applied to WSU this year compared to last year. For lots of obvious reasons, it's now becoming safer and more practical to travel. And we've also started, how many of you have college-age students and have you ever used something called the Common App? Does anyone know what the Common App? Okay, there's a few people. This will be the first year that WSU is going to be part of the Common App. The Common App, so when I applied to college, I typed on a typewriter on a paper form and Xeroxed it and put it in the mail and sent it. But WSU has had its own online proprietary application process. With the Common App, what student can do is put everything in there and click which schools you want to apply for, and it sends that material to multiple colleges. And what this means is it's just going to make it easier for students to apply. They may not think we're their first choice, but we are. And so we got to get them to apply and really see where that goes. So success did not just take place in the classroom or in the lab or in the studio. WSU women's basketball earned their 2nd straight bid into the NCAA tournament and as a number 8 seed. And the WSU men's basketball team made it to the semi-final round in the National Invitation Tournament in Madison Square Garden, my home state. And it felt really good to have basketball teams in contention deep into March. And of course, no recap of the year would be complete without acknowledgement of our Apple Cup victory. And really, unless you've been under a rock, it was 40-13 over the Huskies. It was our first Apple Cup victory in 7 years. And equally exciting, we appointed Jake Dickert as our head football coach this past fall. Jake's right over here. Governor Inslee is wearing the wrong hat. We got. I think we need to Photoshop. So can someone Photoshop that one for the next presentation? We have to tell Kirk about that. And Jake, thank you for your leadership, and it's been a great experience so far working with you. So in sum, looking ahead, WSU is changing the way that we work. We're rededicating ourselves to best possible in-person experiences, but like many people, we're also embracing the hybrid and remote work flexibility where it makes sense. We're mapping student success programs across the system to make sure all of our students thrive. We're implementing a new budget model to more closely align with our strategic priorities. And we're leaning into the concept of WSU as a 6-campus system with a broad placement of our extension programs in every single county in the state of Washington, really identifying those areas that benefit from campus centralization versus autonomy. And all indicators point to an even stronger 2022-2023 year. So I know that there are many members of the WSU leadership team here. If you can stand up and wave your hand if you're somewhere in sight. I know we have Vice President Sashi Pillay, Vice President Chris Hoyt. Looking around the room, I mentioned Paul Petrie. And I think there's Michael Sugarman. It happens to be my husband too, but he's the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs for the Global Campus. And please stop by the booth and say hi. I'll be wandering around. And in closing, I really just want to thank you for all that you do to support WSU. Cougs support Cougs. That's something I've learned very strongly in the past 2 years, and this is a perfect example of that motto. So thank you for attending today. Happy to take any questions. If there's something you didn't like about this presentation, it was Kirk's PowerPoint. But if you really liked it, you could send him an email saying what a great job I did. So thank you.
Any questions? Questions at all?
Questions, comments, anyone? Well, all that's left to say that. Oh, there's one from Alex, okay.
Just to get things started here. Yesterday morning, there was a story on Como TV here in Seattle about Dr. Xiaoming Shi, the CEE department head, who's figured out a way to tear apart used masks, embed them in concrete to make infrastructure stronger. And my wife, who's a Husky, saw that story on the news yesterday morning and said, geez, WSU should tell more stories about the great things that are happening over here in Seattle. And I said, yes, they should. We should. And so I'm curious, Dr. Chilton, if you could talk about what your thoughts about how we can continue to spread the great things that are happening at WSU over here, particularly on the west side.
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, how can we tell our story better? You know, I think that this movement to recognizing that we're maturing as a system will really help that. You know, those of you who went to WSU or work at WSU may not appreciate how unique WSU really is. I have been at 2 other large public university systems. One is a sister land grant. But in those cases, each of the campuses has their own accreditation. They're like their own island. Students apply either to that campus, in the case of Massachusetts, UMass Amherst or UMass Boston or UMass Worcester, you applied. They're really separate institutions held together by a loose network. Here we have one accreditation. Students get a degree that says Washington State University, and faculty get tenure from Washington State University, whether they're in Everett, Vancouver, Tri-Cities, Spokane, at one of our extension locations, and we're growing there. Yakima has a newly founded consortium with PNWU. So there's a strength in that system, but we also need to recognize the importance of place and the communities that we're embedded in. So it's great that Chancellor Paul Petrie is here from Everett. We need to be, strengthening the stories that we're telling about what's happening locally in each of our physical locations. So I think that's really important. And there's a renewed awareness and attention to telling that story as well. Well, I'm just going to say go Cougs again if no one else has another question. So go Cougs. I look forward to meeting you all. Have a great afternoon.